Hi, I'm Alyssa DeTorres, Vice President of Retail here at Zeta Global. Stand, get ready, because we're in for an exciting next chapter in digital acceleration. Introducing Will Margiloff, Chief Strategy Officer and President of Activation at Zeta. Dave Penski, CEO of Publicis Media. Doug Rozen, CEO of Americas in GroupM, and Sean Corcoran, U.S. Mediahub Worldwide. Thank you.
Dave Penski.
We got him. Okay, welcome everyone. Exciting panel today. I feel like we really have like the Olympics here. These are some of the greatest media minds in the entire world right in front of us, representing 150.
Can we laugh at that for a minute?
$150 billion of media spend annually. Incredible amounts. This team in front of me, I'll let them do their intros, heads up 4 of the 5 large, or represents 4 of the 5 large agency holding companies. And they are buying media. They are helping the strategy, the buying, the managing, the optimization of media across multiple channels. And it's very exciting to have all of them here to share a little wisdom with the crowd here. So, Doug, why don't you give a quick intro, and we'll just go down the line and then get Dave. Did we test Dave's audio? Dave?
Hope it's working.
Okay, there we go.
It was tested.
We didn't hear you. Just say that again.
Are you on dial-up?
I am in a very remote area of Texas, I've learned. So we'll see how this works.
Doug?
You hear it or not really?
Yep, we got you.
Yeah, you're good. Hey, I'm Doug Rozen. I'm CEO of Dentsu Media across the Americas, looking after Cara, iProspect, Dentsu X, Amplify, and a whole host of other elements of how we look at media within Dentsu.
Kirk McDonald. I am the CEO of GroupM across U.S. and Canada, and responsible. What rolls into GroupM are the major agencies: Essence Mediacom, Mindshare, Wavemaker, Xaxis, Finecast, and a long list of others.
Sean Corcoran. I'm the U.S. CEO of Mediahub. Apparently, I'm representing IPG today, which they probably would not approve of, but that's okay. Tough shit for now. So I run the U.S. for Mediahub.
So now I'm actually going to go now instead of to talk about my audio failure. So I'm David Penski. I run media for Publicis.
Okay.
And for the record, we all don't like each other, so this is going to be really spicy.
This started as a steel cage match, but we got it down to 4 chairs. So in the back, everyone said, I said, I had 5, 6 questions, and then Sean told me, you're going to get through 1. So we're going to start with that 1, or 2, sorry. That 1 is really simple, which is, what do you think's happening now in the media industry, and what is your prediction for next year, and how do you see things moving from a media budget perspective, in that kind of shortish time frame? Immediate and maybe long term is 1 year from now.
That's like a 6-part question.
Keep
It's
going.
like Rodney Dangerfield
Answer's
in
4.
Back to School.
Doug, we'll just go down the line again.
Well, I think there is a lot going on. One of the things that's so fascinating about the space we're all in is how complex it has become. It used to be much simpler if you even think about 10, 15 years ago. And today, the need to manage media across so many facets, the responsibility of some of the budgets we have for our clients, and the expectation of those budgets to actually yield tangible value and not just drive savings is, I think, more critical than ever before. And so that puts a lot of strain on the type of resources, the type of capability, the type of differentiation we all try to stand for at the same time.
Are we staying in this order? Because I wanted to go after Penske. I was just going to copy his answer.
Okay. All right, you can wait.
All right. I would say what's going on now and what do we think's coming. I think 21 was not as bad as we thought it would be. 22 felt like a release for the most part of whatever was pent-up tension still that was left over. So the second half of 21 felt like we got to get back. And then 22 started really strong. I still think we're carrying momentum. I think most of our clients would say that they've had some of their best years ever. A lot of us would say that the business looks good, but there is nervousness around economic uncertainties and macro issues that go beyond our industry. So despite feeling like a good year, the mix of what's going on in the economy and what feels like get a little bit conservative is attention now. And I don't know how that plays out yet. I do know that, I'm guessing most people are preparing regardless, even though we don't know if it's Hurricane Ian coming or just like, a little bit of sprinkles or something like that.
I just love how you said sprinkles.
I had a bet with somebody. I had a bet with Anthony. I'd say sprinkles on this panel.
Curious which one. Let's see. I would say macro-wise, to Doug's point, a hot mess, right? We just live in a hot mess of a world where it's privacy regulation on top of cookie. I don't even need to go through all the stuff that we all pretty much know about. And I think every client we have is like, what do we do? And I think that's fun in a lot of ways and exciting in a lot of ways, but really also incredibly challenging because I think I spent 2 decades training a lot of people to push buttons within Google platform and things like that. And now I'm like, hey, could you tell this client what to do now as act like a consultant? I think that's a real challenge within, not only top of the Great Resignation, but we've kind of wasted 2 decades on these kids and young people that we train them all up to basically push buttons, and then we just trade them back and forth for a bunch of money. So I think that's a real challenge that I really want to overcome is getting people to be a little more strategic, and that scares me because on top of the macro problem, I do think it's going to be a tough year coming up. I just do. It just feels like, and it's not really a reflection. I have much smaller client spend than these guys, but to me, it just feels like, we have a lot of Silicon Valley clients. You just feel the edges are starting to creep in, and for me, the big question is just what's going to happen. It's going to be pretty exciting because I think you have probably a pie of advertising that's been growing so much over the last decade that probably isn't going to grow as fast. And then the competition that the likes of Google and those guys have are now like Apple and Amazon and other people. So I think it's going to be a really interesting time. So I think we're walking into something really fascinating. A little scary too.
I'll give a slightly different answer. I don't want to copy. So I will say that I don't think it's going to change as much. We always talk about change much faster than it happens. So I think that I don't think you're going to see a big difference between 21, 22, 23 from a media perspective. We're always slower to change. We've been talking about personalization at scale for I think 10 years. We've been talking about 5G for 5 years. So I think that there's always we overestimate kind of the future a bit. So in a very basic world, we are fighting for attention for our clients. We want to make sure that each of those clients receives the attention from the customer they want. And I don't think that's going to change dramatically over the next year. For the outlook, I think that I feel very positive about the U.S. I think I echo everyone on the panel. I don't think there's going to be, I think we have a pretty good situation right now comparatively over even the last 10 years where we've had such strong growth, 21, 22. I think 23 will be not as good, but a good year. But I don't feel the same for Europe. I think Asia are going to see much more challenging markets than we do. I think the effect of inflation is more severe. And certainly Latin America is another area where we're going to really struggle from an inflationary standpoint. So I am optimistic to a point for next year.
So maybe just digging in on that. So some of you guys handle just digital. Some of you are handling all media. Does digital continue to grow? And within digital, what will grow and what will be stagnant or flat? And is it digital grow at the expense of what?
I actually want to challenge that because I don't know what digital is or is not anymore. And I think we're getting to a place where we either have to think about formats, video, audio, static, whatever it might be, or by type, reservation, IO-based versus programmatic or machine-based. I don't think it's right, and I think we're all moving away from digital versus non-digital, because I think digital is permeating every aspect of every channel and every format to some extent.
Ditto. I'm copy on that one.
So
Determined to copy it.
next question. We're now to 3. No, I don't know. Unless you guys feel differently. I mean,
No, I think we've taken that turn. And now to me, it's more the dogfight question, right? It's like everything's a platform. So if NBC Universal Comcast is now a platform that can offer you audiences and streaming and digital-like things with different types of measurement, maybe they use Nielsen one, maybe they don't, maybe they, that compared to what Google offers you, you're now just in an ecosystem of ecosystems, right? That to me is a mess. And it's just like they're going to be battling each other out, and that makes our job back to the complexity thing.
well, but it makes our job exciting as well. So I know there's this annual question of what's the role of agencies and holding companies. I feel like right now it's only gotten more important because of the fact that there is now ecosystems on ecosystems that we have to help navigate through.
So the agency is not going away?
Not anytime soon,
All
in my
right,
view.
well, you learned something there today.
Well, you had the in-housing thing there. I think for me, it's like I was in search, 15 years ago. Search has been a perfect example of in-house, take it out, taking it. And they've been doing that stuff for years. I don't think that, maybe they do it with paid social now. No, they do. To me, it just, somebody shows up and they go, why are we doing all this here? Let's go bring it back out to the agencies more flexible. So to me, that's not really a concern. I totally agree with Doug. I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's so complex that I feel like service is desperately needed and that knowledge is desperately. Maybe it's not the same model we've had for obviously, the last 20, 40, 50 years, but it feels like that idea of an agency doesn't go away. So I'm really optimistic about our opportunity there.
Talk to me a little bit about Netflix. Anyone have an opinion on ad-supported Netflix?
Sure.
We'll go to that quickly. Dave.
Yeah, I think first of all, the more entrance to the ecosystem is better for us. So if we have certainly a product that has got a huge amount of available inventory, which we desperately need for our clients, I think in the beginning it's going to be very small. I think they're going to have to find their way. They will find their way, but it's going to take time. So I think we don't want to have oversized expectations coming out of the gate for the next 9 to 12 months. But I think after that, they're going to figure this out. They have very smart people. They have an incredible product right now. They're going to figure out how advertising works on that. They're going to figure out in terms of the right mix of commercials versus non-commercials. I think this is going to be a really good thing for industry to have such a large entrant to market, which is needed. Certainly for us, the more that we can use from a negotiation standpoint, the better. I just think at the moment it's far behind any other advertising platform just because they're effectively a startup. So how could you expect more out of them? So I think positive on this one also, but it's long term. I'm not positive in short term. Short term, I think it's going to be a minimal effect. But I think that what Hulu did years ago and Disney's done a good job of over the last couple of years of kind of bringing in that ability for consumers to make the choice of no advertising, some advertising, lots of advertising. And I think you're going to see that across all platforms that allow that ability. And really for us, you talk about things repeat themselves. This is really how our model started even 40 or 50 years ago in television, where it's advertiser supported content and consumers understand they're trading their attention for those ads and they get content for it. And they think it's a fair trade. And it's a very good model for the consumer. It's a very good model for agencies and clients to reach the right consumers. So for those things, it's all very positive for me.
So again, similar sentiments. Again, to the earlier question, if it can be digital, it'll become digital. So we don't think of shifts anymore. It's all digital. So it's all going to be controlled and we'll have signals. Netflix coming in, just as Dave suggested, I think the caution that we would put out there is for all the early movers, there has to be a patient approach and a recognition that you're getting in when a lot hasn't been resolved yet. So 12 months out, I think so much more will be answered, but in the near term, you don't have a lot of targetability. There really isn't a lot of the measurements and accountability that you care about. Some of the brand safety stuff, there's a lot for them to work out. So what we're doing is just managing the expectations of the early movers so that you understand what's going to happen, at least in the near term, because we're going to have to sort it out as they learn. And there's a big learning to be had around how consumers will react to the introduction of ads in the format, right? And we don't have that many precedents to explain what the reaction will be. So we're going to learn from those, but that's just sort of a cautionary tale to anyone who's jumping in early.
They also don't have any subscribers for an ad-supported model right now. So as they roll this out, it's going to be important. They've made assumptions, which they shared with all of us, on what the users should be or could be and how they're going to go about growing that. But it's going to take a year to get to an audience that's enough critical mass, because you're going to have to pay for that access even in an ad-supported format as well. So it's going to be an interesting element. The one thing I'm really excited for, beyond just like some of the innovations that they're talking about, is the algorithm underneath it. Netflix has spent, if you go back to all the challenges that they had over the years of trying to perfect the algorithm for their recommendation engine, it'll be interesting to see if or how that will be applied to advertising, not just content. And I think that could be something over time that is really exciting to look at.
Right. So down that path, though, to the degree that the ads will be managed by Microsoft and Xandr, that begins to be interesting, right?
Maybe.
Maybe, right? So there's just a lot to figure out there.
Well, that leads me into my next question about identity, because Netflix obviously has a massive user base, and some of those people are going to move over to an ad-supported model. But how do you guys think about identity and the use of data when you're creating or thinking about strategies and media plans for your clients?
Nowadays, I start with, do you have permission to do what you think you want to go do? I think that's the biggest identity question we ask everyone. We've been collecting a lot of data for a long time. We've been actually using it. But now all of the changes in laws are really beginning to have everyone question, what permission do you really have to use it? And not just the permission to use it, even if you have that permission, what is going to be the creepy to compliance meter of use, right? So everything you can do is not what you should do when it comes to data and identity. So how are you scoring the behavior you are going to have in that relationship with the consumer? And that's the question we're posing.
Is that a graph that you guys built yourself, and or are you using third parties as supplement?
This is a free plug for our
there you go.
data ethics calculator, brought to you by GroupM. So much like our other holding companies, we're trying to figure out how to advise clients on that. So we built a data ethics calculator, right? Again, that is the thesis of it. So not because you have the data, you should use the data. And think of it as a FICO score on when you should or shouldn't apply data. And again, it goes back to the question of, well, what permission do you really have? And does that fit the format you're trying to express it in?
I think what's interesting, all four companies here have significant data assets. And each of us in our own, but in some ways similar ways, have thought about ethics, privacy, identity resolution, matching with media owners.
No, Doug, ours is better.
And so I think at the end of the day, it does come down to not only what do you have permission, but also, everyone strives for this deep level of personalization and contextualization. The question is the juice always worth that squeeze? And how do you, if it's a continuum, there's a pragmatic versus personalization kind of continuum that you have to think about as well.
I just add, I think, at the end of the day, that hasn't been proven, really, at a mass scale. And we really haven't proven that in all cases. I think one-to-one was such a holy grail kind of thing. There are instances where one-to-one is very important, but humans are a social animal by nature. So being able to share and walk around, share a common culture, I think, is a little lost in some of that stuff. So for me, the one thing that really hasn't bubbled to the top that I thought might happen is our industry would have almost like, I think we have people that are data strategists, so to speak, But I don't think that particular role has popped up as like a department or a thing just yet where like, you know, you may have it, but is it something that like is a really big thing?
No, I
that
think
we're all
you're
talking
spot
about?
on. Like culture isn't defined in one-to-one marketing. Action and motivation and engagement can be defined, but culture happens in much more mass campaigns.
And I think that's what's missing a little bit. And so it's just, and if you have a good data strategy plus comms brand strategist type working together, and the industry doesn't do that well. It just doesn't. It's not set up that way. I think we're getting closer to that, but it's just, how do you look at the data capability? What's your first party? What do you have, you know, looking at the whole infrastructure and going, what can I do from a privacy? That's all stuff you have to map out. Then you have to sit there and go, okay, what's the strategy for actually reaching the humans and impacting the humans, and what's the best way? Is all that one-to-one through a machine, through DCO type stuff that's all driven by a machine? That doesn't really work well yet. I mean, most of our machines are pretty dumb if you think about it. You know, you shop for a pair of shoes and you see those, you bought the shoes, and then an hour later they're still trying to sell you shoes on Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, we all have a dumb machine. It's not smart enough yet, and I think we're not putting in that human element yet, and I don't think we've really built the capabilities as an industry yet. And that to me feels like a nice corner that we'll all probably turn in the next few years.
So is it my turn to do the epsilon identity graph, and I can show it? Do you have slides for me, Will, or I'm not sure?
No slides, but you can talk to us.
Dave, your dial-up isn't working.
I don't know what to say here, but no, I think that, you know, there's pieces of it. To me, on identity, it also depends what the product is. I think sometimes we make this too broad, where if someone's selling toilet paper versus someone that's selling something that is truly targeted, if they're selling a watch or a car or something different. I think so often that we use the identity solution on too broad of a client. But I actually think there are a number of cases where this has been proven out as a real differentiator on identity and having the ability to target the correct consumer. It's not for everybody. You can't be 100% of your budget. I think there needs to be a piece of that is about reach and culture. I couldn't agree more with what you guys are saying, but I think there are pieces or portions of the funnel that are really directed towards, and this is a really powerful element for conversion.
I was just totally agree, and I think the important thing is not thinking it's a one size fits all, and that there are pieces and ways that it works, but at the same time, you don't need to get to one-to-one to use identity and data to make media and marketing better. And, you know, thinking about audience planning versus how do you actually go and buy, there's certain ways that you can use identity data up front to make your, you know, certain decisions smarter and more strategic, even if you don't have to go further than that because it might not be worth it. So it's also finding the right places in your process to use data versus not.
Disruptive new players, right? So in the last couple of years, probably TikTok is probably the biggest that's kind of entered the marketplace. And obviously some of the more disruptive ones for the last 10 years, the Twitters, the Snaps, have gone up, gone down, had their issues. Like, what's on the horizon? What are you guys hearing? How are you getting knowledge of some of these disruptive players, and what do you think is next? Maybe even what channel is that going to be in? Maybe it's mobile or, you know, video on demand or something like that. How do you guys, or CTV, how do you guys think about that?
I'd probably hijack David's answer in terms of, you know, I think we spent 3-4 months just explaining the metaverse to people, just because there's been so much freaking talk about the damn metaverse, and it's like, okay, I think that's
Do we have a
wonderful
metaverse panel?
Do we? It's wonderful. No, but in like, you
This
know,
is gonna
maybe
continue
by
into the metaverse.
Maybe by 2030, we're all walking around like it's Second Life, and we're all living in that. What great.
I'm not actually here.
Yeah.
Dave is.
Dave's here. I'm actually
You're not. But I mean, I think we spend so much time with that. NFTs, oh my God, how many people in this industry are running around? There's certain people that are running around telling every client that they need to be building NFTs. I'm like, that's wonderful, but like 200,000 people minted an NFT last year. So I think it's wonderful, cool technology that at some point we aim towards, and we're probably going to get there. But there's a period in between that we all have to get through that we've just been talking about that I think is really important. So, you know, I look at things like Clubhouse, which came and did not go. It's still around. It still has a value, but we got so excited about Clubhouse. I think there was, you know, 6,000, you know, articles about it for 2 months, and now then it was the metaverse, and it's NFT and Web 3.0. BeReal's, I think, pretty hot now with like 10 million users. To me, it's like, I think looking at it saying that the TikToks of the world don't come up as often, I think, as we think they do. You know, like there's a Snap, there's a TikTok, you could say that, but I think there was a period of time where a bunch of them popped out. Now they're a little less, less there. I get more excited about what happens within the big platforms. So you take like a YouTube and go, look at Mr. Beast. Like that's the thing I think people are overlooking completely. Mr. Beast comes out, he's got 100 million plus followers on YouTube suddenly. You know, that's grown exponentially in the last couple of years. He fills a mall with like thousands of people because he's opening a burger joint. And a lot of people are like, who the hell is Mr. Beast? And you're like, if you don't know that, and I actually don't really know that well. Someone's like, do you know Bad Bunny? Do you know this? I'm like, oh, wow, this fragmentation of culture as well as media is a little like really crazy to me. And that's the thing that I have probably more of an eye on than worrying about like if another platform's going to pop up, because I think we have plenty of platforms at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree with Sean on that one. Again, same sentiments that the promise of the metaverse, the promise of these, they're all tech. What I would pull through is the thread of what is the role of influencers, micro brands, and their ability to then convene audiences on their own, and then how do we actually participate authentically with that? And there really isn't a formula or even a set of best practices yet around all of that. So that's still an area of rapid learning for us that we want to keep exploring, because the trick is not that you can't try to do something, where tons of people are trying, but I don't know that we have a lot of successes yet, or that there's a formula to success. And in our business, again, you talk about our scale, for us to grow sometimes, it is about finding the patterns so that we can be repeatable and do it over and over again. In this space of influencer marketing, social commerce, et cetera, it starts feeling like we have to come up with a bespoke or a different tact every time, and that's a lot of learning.
I think we often try to reinvent ourselves because we just forgot the last 5 years. And what we have to remember is there's always going to be something next. There's always next. It's how you think about it, how you get creative, how you test with it. And soon the next becomes the normal. But what we always get captivated by is what's next without realizing that there's so much that we have at our disposal right now. So we're less focused on, I'll say, the multiverse. And I say multiverse versus metaverse because it needs to also be a recognition of a physical reality, a digital reality, and a mixed or virtual reality all coming together. Nobody's going to leave and slap a cinder block on their face and say, "Bye, honey, I'm going to the multiverse today," or metaverse, or wherever it is you go. You're still going to have a physical experience with brands and advertisers as much as you have a virtual one. But I think what's more important right now is thinking about things that we have massive access and opportunity to. So like gaming's a perfect example. Such a critical element. 60-some-odd% of all of us do some sort of gaming every day. But how do we find the right way for marketers and advertisers to be a part of that?
Dave?
I'll give a simple answer. I think one, TikTok, I agree, is a breakthrough. I think you only get so many TikToks, but to me, I think if you look for the next year or 2 years, it's going to be Netflix. I mean, they're going to get there, and they have such a massive user base. They have a massive content. They're going to figure the problems out they have now. And if you look 2 years from now, I mean, who's going to add $1 billion in ad revenue or $2 billion in ad revenue? It's not someone who just come up tomorrow. It's going to be Netflix. So I look at it as a monster player that's in the same realm as a Twitter, a TikTok, or a Snap. I believe it's going to be Netflix. So I think that's the next one. And
I was going to say Apple Apple's one. I wouldn't keep far from that list.
Yeah, and I still, again, this may be a little contrarian. I think Netflix is going to have a very important role, but it's still a share shift. I don't think they've figured out what the ad format is yet, right? That's going to be a really interesting thing. Is it a break? And if it's just a regular break, then it's going to be one version of it. But if it's something completely different, then yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity there as well. So as was said earlier in the panel, it only is getting more complex. It is only getting more interesting. So fun times.
I want to thank the panelists. I also want to tell you guys, DEI is a very important subject and initiative at our company. I want to thank these four guys for helping us. We do a lot of work with these guys. on the DEI side. We're going to continue to do it. If we're not doing as much as we should, I know, Sean, we do a lot with you. We'll continue to do it with these other guys. But I want to thank you guys. Great panel. Too short, but really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks.